Hello everyone, Maria and
Gina
with Reflect and Reset with Maria and Gina. And first we want to thank you for continuing to give us so much support. You guys are wonderful and our followers, Gina, are growing.
Yeah, we have thousands of followers now.
Yes, and thousands of views. So thank you so much. And the information that we want to bring to you, we want to make sure that it's valuable. And we have a special guest today that Gina will be making the introduction.
I am the introduction girl. So we have Dr. Patrick Thomas, who is not only a board member at the American Heart Association, but he's also the chief of cardiology at New York Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. I got it right.
Yes.
And he's going to talk to us about healthier lifestyles and how we can start motivating ourselves because 2020 is coming, and how do we stay motivated. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. First, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here and to speak to your audience, the thousands of viewers, as you said. I am a cardiologist affiliated with the New York Presbyterian Health System. I've been practicing in this area for just under 20 years. And we serve patients throughout Westchester as well as Putnam counties. I am what's known as a non-invasive cardiologist, so I don't do procedures or surgeries. Most of my time is spent in the office or in the hospital, hopefully preventing heart attacks and strokes, but occasionally taking care of people after they've had those events. But again, my focus really is on, as much as possible, preventing that from ever happening.
And what is the prevention that you would, tell us about how you would prevent something like that?
One of the statistics that I think is most shocking, and I certainly won't bore people with a lot of statistics, but the American Heart Association estimates that over 80% of all heart attacks and strokes, so the vast majority of them, can be prevented by simply paying a little more attention to diet, exercise, and where necessary, taking medications for things like blood pressure, cholesterol, or diabetes. So again, the vast majority of heart attacks and strokes never need to happen. If we just put a little time and a little effort in to taking care of ourselves, checking in with the doctor from time to time, and taking medications if appropriate.
Which is, it is such a huge challenge, right, in our community. I know personally, God, I have very close friends and family members struggling with weight, and you see that and you're like, what do I do to help them?
It's like a food addiction.
It's so difficult so even to get them to exercise, and I think it's almost like a vicious cycle because you
Absolutely.
are overweight and you're lethargic. It is hard for you to get up early and do these things, so you get to a cycle that is just, it's a bad cycle. So what are the things that you feel we can do to help people like that?
Sure, and as you point out, it really is a vicious cycle, and so our job is really to try to change that into what we call a virtuous cycle. So a vicious cycle is one where it just keeps perpetuating downward and downward. And so you want to interrupt that, and you want to try to then make it so that you make small gains in the beginning that then feed on themselves to make bigger and bigger gains. And I'll certainly go through some examples. But building on what we were talking about before we came on camera and how you just finished your first marathon, and again, congratulations
Thank
for
you.
doing that, Maria.
Thank
Every marathon, the old phrase goes, begins with one step.
Yes.
Right? You don't go out and you don't run a marathon. You build slowly, steadily over a long period of time to be able to run a marathon. And so for people who aren't used to exercising and aren't used to working on trying to take care of themselves, simple, basic, easy things. So taking a little bit of a walk, right? Instead of sitting down, putting your feet up and watching the Yankees or the Giants or whatever your sports team is, right? Or the latest talk shows, is simply getting up and moving around a little bit. The United States health departments have determined that if you can just get 2,000 extra steps a day compared to what you're normally getting, and we all have nowadays Fitbits, Apple Watches,
I was going to say the smartphone that tells you exactly
that record
the steps.
how many steps.
Yep.
If you can just get 2,000 more steps a day, that's by no means running a marathon, but it is going to have a dramatic impact on your cardiovascular and overall health over a period of years. And that's not a lot. 2,000 steps.
Yeah.
It's parking a little further away from the grocery
Right.
store. It's taking the stairs up to the second floor instead of the elevator, right? It's getting up during commercial breaks if you're watching a show and walking around the couch a couple of times. So little tiny things like that can really make a huge difference.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, it becomes like a game, because then you want to try to make sure that you make those steps.
There's the virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
So once you start tracking it and you say, oh, I normally do 2,000 steps a day. I'm going to try to do a little bit more. And then you see the numbers go up. Then it becomes that virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
And you start building, and you're building, you're like, I'm going to get a few more, I'm going to get a few more. Pretty soon you're at 5,000 steps, and you say, I can keep going, I can do a little bit more. So these trackers can be so powerful. And on the same end, when it comes to food, our smartphones and our smartwatches can be so powerful. There are so many diet tracking apps out there. And I won't single out anyone in particular, but you can literally, with 2 or 3 keystrokes, pull up the type of meal you're having, how much you're having, and it will show you the calorie content. It will show you the nutritional information. My daughter literally just started one of these tracker apps within the last 4 months, and she was absolutely appalled at the stuff that she would be putting into her mouth. And then she'd track it and say, oh my God, I had no idea there were 400 calories in a small coffee, that has all of the stuff mixed in. So these trackers can, again, be very powerful tools to help give you some guidance and some direction. And they're usually free.
I like the fact that in a lot of the restaurants, even at, I think, Starbucks, they have the calories. And I know my daughter is in a kick where she's very healthy. She's very healthy.
She's a little stringy.
Yeah, but she's watching that, and she's like, oh my God, that's almost 2,000 calories. Like, I'm not going to have that. And that's important, right?
It's a huge step forward as far as we're concerned with the American Heart Association and in cardiology in general. When you go into one of these chain restaurants and you see that one of the appetizers has more calories than you should have in an entire day, and that's just the appetizer, but most people don't realize that. They didn't know that, and then it hits you in the face. And I would actually be an advocate for more labeling. So right now it's mostly calories. Occasionally they'll have a little bit on salt intake, but I would really like to see, and you can nowadays with most chains pull up their menus online, and you can see, wow, this salad looked healthy, but it has, as much fat in one salad as you need in an entire day.
How many calories should somebody eat?
So everybody's a little bit different, and for Maria, who just did her marathon, her calorie needs are going to be very different than somebody who is not going, through that kind of training. But the average adult needs roughly between 2,000 and 2,500 calories a day.
And that would sustain weight without gaining weight.
Right. And the idea is weight is unfortunately a relatively simple physics equation, right? It's calories taken in versus calories burned. Right. There's really nothing complicated about that. And so by definition, if you want to have a stable weight, you generally have to consume roughly as many calories as you burn on a daily basis. Recognize your body, even just the 3 of us sitting here, we're burning calories as we're talking.
Okay.
Not a lot, but we're burning some calories. So if you want to lose weight, by definition, you must burn up in the course of a day more calories than you're consuming.
So if you're lifting weights, and this is maybe a myth or maybe it is true, that when you lift weights, you're actually burning calories through the day?
So, well, first off, when you do lift weights, you are doing mechanical work, so by definition, you do burn calories. And usually when you're lifting weights, you're putting on some muscle mass. So when you're doing that, you do need to consume more calories than if you're not lifting weights. The more muscle mass you have, in general, the higher amount of calories that you're burning when you're at rest, doing no activities.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, now that doesn't mean everybody should go out and try to pump iron and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of the day.
And that's very hard to do anyway.
So, in general, we generally recommend, if you're going to do weights, roughly about 3 days a week with a day off in between. Whereas for cardio type exercises, the ones that get the heart rate really going, we're looking for 5 days a week. You really don't want to let more than 2 days go between aerobic workout sessions.
And you said you lost muscle mass when you were training.
when I
For
was
the
running for the
marathon.
marathon, I was
I would
not
think that you would have
lifting.
gained muscle mass and
I was very.
Well, right. Sometimes what happens is, again, when you're training for some of these ultra events, and a marathon certainly is an ultra event, you might not be able to take in enough calories during the day
Yeah.
to make up for what you're burning.
Right.
And you actually then lose some muscle mass if you're not careful about that. And that's, we were talking about one of my partners who was an Ironman triathlete. He would sometimes consume 9,000 calories a day and still lose muscle mass because he couldn't, he was working out 3 hours a day. Now, those are extreme examples. For most of us that don't train for marathons and things like that, it's not too much of a worry in terms of losing muscle mass.
What do you think of peptides? Do you like peptides especially when you were training, you were using them for
So
muscle?
I am a big fan of getting almost all of the things you need from a nutritional standpoint from the food you eat.
Okay.
Right? There was a author, Michael Pollan, who about 10 years ago came up with an incredible 7-word, 3-sentence phrase that basically sums up everything you need to know about eating. It's so simple, it's so easy, it's magical actually. And the phrase is, eat food, period. Not too much, period. Mostly plants, period. Okay? So
Sounds like a doctor, another doctor I know.
Absolutely brilliant in its simplicity. So eat food. Don't eat food-like products. I'm not a big fan of supplements. I'm not a big fan of additional type things. Get the nutrition you need from food, right? If you're reading the ingredients and you can't pronounce what's on the label, probably not good, right? Not too much. There's the concept of portion control, right? You want to burn up roughly about as many calories as you take in a day. And if you're going to be mostly sedentary on a particular day, you probably don't want to be eating a whole lot. If you're going to be burning a lot of calories, then you can eat more. And then mostly plants. So most cardiologists would tell you that, again, marathon and other extreme athletes being a potential exception, but for most people, an almost plant-based diet is probably ideal for your overall cardiovascular health. Now, most people aren't going to eat that way, but that is probably ideal.
My daughter just decided to become a vegetarian at the age of 11, so I was very concerned because I'm thinking she's not going to get enough nutrients and she's out of growth.
Well, right, and you have to be very careful with children. So everything I've said so far is restricted to people 18 and above.
Got it.
Because when you're growing, your caloric needs are very different, your nutritional needs very different. And so when you become vegetarian, or in the extreme sense, vegan, you have to be cautious about how you do things. You can definitely get some nutritional deficiencies with those diets if you're not careful and you're not very deliberate in your selection of your protein sources and things like that. Vegetarian is a little easier than vegan, because vegetarians typically can have milk products, they can have eggs, and a lot of vegetarians will eat seafood. And most of us in cardiology believe, and certainly the research that's been supported by the American Heart Association supports this, that if you're going to have animal-derived protein, fish and other types of seafood are without question the best.
Sure.
Let me ask you, right now, so many people are on blood pressure medication. And I see, you know, some people talk about side effects, like for a man. Is it true that it could create impotence?
Sure. So, you know, unfortunately, in our society, most people don't do the type of diet and exercise that we've been discussing. And even those that do, in full disclosure, myself included, I run every day and I eat a very heart-healthy diet, but I've been on both blood pressure and cholesterol medications for the last almost 20 years.
Is it
There's a genetic component to it, yeah. And I shudder to think about how many meds I'd be taking if I weren't being careful with diet and weren't being attentive with exercise. And yes, there are plenty of medications out there to treat blood pressure, treat cholesterol, and some medicines do have side effects. Every medicine has the potential for side effects. And so we as doctors have to be very careful about prescribing things, knowing that, for some blood pressure medicines for men, impotence is a known side effect. The good news is nowadays we have so many good blood pressure medicines out there that really don't have that as a side effect and really don't have much, if any, side effects, that we can usually get somebody on a medication that they can tolerate that does the job of lowering blood pressure and really doesn't cause them a problem in terms of side effects.
If somebody is on blood pressure medication and they decided, I forgot my medication today and now it's 3 days, how dangerous is that?
Well, each case is unique, and somebody who has a severe blood pressure problem is going to be at more risk than somebody whose blood pressure is only a little bit elevated. But in general, missing a medication here or there tends to not cause too much in the way of problems, but as you get 3 days, 4 days perhaps, or you miss a week, you go on vacation, you forgot to take your medications, that can be a little bit on the dangerous side. But the converse is, if they had never gone on medicines in the first place, and they should have, that's even more dangerous.
That's true.
I need to check my cholesterol and my blood pressure.
Know your numbers, right? So the American Heart Association is very big on promoting people empowering themselves to take charge of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Know what your blood pressure is.
Mm-hmm.
Know what your cholesterol is. Things like that. They're simple. They're easy. Nowadays you can get them checked very quickly, very easily with your doctor. And those numbers, and then what you do with those numbers, can really make a huge difference in your life.
Do we have a question?
We have a question.
Yes, Alan is asking you about the intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting?
Sure, and we were actually talking a little bit about this beforehand. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of science in humans about the benefits or detriments of intermittent fasting. It can be useful as a way to kickstart a healthier eating program. I tend not to recommend it to my patients. I think most nutrition experts, and especially those who work with people who have diabetes, talk about how we really need to be eating more meals a day, not fewer meals a day, but smaller. So the typical American diet is 2, maybe 3 meals a day. Not much for breakfast, not much for lunch, and then eat through the kitchen at dinner, right? That is just the most horrendous way you can possibly eat. Most nutrition experts talk about having 5 meals a day. Small breakfast, a mid-morning snack, and again, all healthy choices when we're talking here, of course. Like a piece of fruit, a granola bar, a handful of nuts. Nuts are wonderful, especially if they're not salted. Sensible lunch, mid-afternoon snack, and an early, light dinner. Most people, they eat till they're full at dinner, put their feet up and watch TV.
Yeah,
and go to
It's
sleep.
the
They go to
worst,
sleep.
and they go to sleep. It's
Yeah.
the worst thing you can do. So I think the science behind that is a little more developed than the science behind fasting. Again, they may find fasting does work at some point in the future, but at least we just, as of now, don't know.
She's a big fan, and I actually intermittent fast as well.
Right.
And that's how I lost a lot of my weight. And then before going gluten-free, I went gluten-free in January. So I'm almost a year gluten-free, and I feel a lot healthier. But I do the intermittent fasting. It's almost like natural for me now, because I'm not a big breakfast eater. I don't love breakfast.
Yeah.
Actually, the science is pretty robust, saying that breakfast is an incredibly important meal.
Yeah, and I'm not a big egg eater. I'm not.
So let's talk about what's coming next, right? We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas.
Oh,
And
and we have eating and drinking and partying.
yeah, so give us, and before we go, I want to talk about the drinks, right? Calories and drinks, but tell us, how do we help our followers that are going to indulge into, because that's what we think, Thanksgiving and Christmas, like all you do is eat.
And but then they're thinking, well, New Year's is coming, and I'll just start dieting then. So
Right.
they go crazy during
Right.
the holidays.
First and foremost, setting realistic expectations. Nobody is going to fast during Thanksgiving.
Right.
Nobody's going to fast for Christmas or some of the other holidays. And so you're going to go to parties. There's going to be unhealthy food there, and you're going to have some of it. That's
Yeah.
just the way parties work. And more than anything, I think portion control really is where it starts. It's not letting your eyes get bigger than your stomach. And so when you're sitting down at the table and you've got the turkey, which is the healthiest part of the Thanksgiving meal, but then you've got the stuffing, you've got the mashed potatoes. Now, if they're mashed sweet potatoes, that's a little healthier, but usually people put a whole lot of butter in, of course, and brown sugar and all sorts of other things. So it's about smaller portions. And then, what's typical for Thanksgiving is there's usually 2, if not 3 football games on, right? So it's after you're done with the meal, it's sit on the couch and watch the football through the insides of your eyelids as you're taking a nap, right? So maybe after eating, is get up and take a brisk walk, especially if it's a nice day out. Go for a little bit of a walk, get your body moving a bit, and start to burn a couple of those calories that you've put on.
Yeah, but that tryptophan kicks in.
It does, and you get very sick. So it turns out that little walk actually helps block some of the effects of the tryptophan, and you can actually make it so you can watch some football as opposed to snoring through it.
Got it.
That's awesome. So what do you think? People create these New Year resolutions,
Right.
What do you think of that?
Well, how do you stay with it?
And
Well,
how-
sure.
how do you-
And the key is how do you stay with it? I
Yeah.
agree with you, Gina. And so I love the idea of a New Year's resolution. Anything that motivates you to do the right thing is by definition positive. So I don't care what the reason that you have for starting to eat healthier, starting to exercise, quitting smoking, whatever it is, whether it's an anniversary, it's a new year, anything that motivates you is wonderful. So I'm a big fan of New Year's resolutions, and like anything else, inertia is a powerful force. So a body at rest stays at rest. A body in motion stays in motion. So when people, after New Year's, they join the health club, right? They go and they hurt themselves on day 1 and then they never go back because they're sore, they're tired.
Yeah.
Right? When you begin an exercise program, just like with eating, it's setting realistic expectations. Is you don't want to start going a half an hour of hard, kickboxing classes 5 days a week. You want to ease yourself into it. If you start hard, you hurt yourself, you never go back, you haven't helped anything.
Yeah.
So it's when I give the rah-rah speech, as I call it, in my office to patients, and I often say, look, I know you're excited to go exercise, I know you're ready to do it, but make sure you keep the reins on a little bit and don't push too hard, especially in the beginning. Right? Give yourself some time to recover. Make sure you take a day off between each workout. And when you try to think about them as strategies to sustain it, as long as you're feeling okay, sometimes it's exercising with friends, exercising with relatives, exercising with coworkers, right? Getting a group of people to go out at lunch, take a walk if it's a nice day at lunch, right? Or having a get together on a weekend, go to the gym, take a dance class together, play tennis as you like to play. So things like that.
And the truth is, what we talked about before we came on live was you have to do something you like. Because if you're going to start getting to for me to go running, I'm never going to stay with it because I don't like to run. But if you're going to do something, but I'll run after a tennis ball. But I won't run on the treadmill or outside.
Right.
But do something you like.
Either do something you like, or if you don't like anything, do something you don't hate. Right? So a perfect example is the husband who buys his wife a treadmill, and it sits there with boxes on it and clothes hanging off it because the wife never wanted a treadmill. And so sometimes joining a gym can be a wonderful thing because you get to try out different machines. You get to try out different things. Usually you can get a pretty cheap 3-month membership at some of the local gyms where you can try stuff out before you go and plunk down some money on it.
$10 a month. Planet Fitness is $10 a month.
And I think you need to have major determination to really work out at home. There's so many distractions.
Motivation.
So, determination, motivation.
It works both ways though. So if it were for me, and if I had to go to a gym, I have to get in the car. I have to drive there if it's snowing, right? There's so many different things that can get in the way. No, but there are distractions at home, right? If you have little kids and they keep trying to pull you off the treadmill or off the bicycle, that can be a problem as well.
You have your routine.
I've been working out at 5 o'clock in the morning for most of my life.
And that's what I do as well. Yeah.
And I do it at home.
Yep.
So I just joined Orangetheory, recently after the marathon. You know what I have to say? The marathon left such a void because I was training for 4 months. And the marathon is a perfect example how you need to start, because I was running a mile per day. So it was 5 miles per week.
Yep.
And then I ended up running 40 miles per week. So but when the marathon was done, I started working out the second day. And I said, because Monday I needed the rest.
Yeah,
Like,
recover.
everything was just pretty broken. But on Tuesday I said, I need to get up, because that's my frame. Like, working out is the frame that I create every morning. And even if it's not going to be to the full potential, it's better than, not working out at all.
Exactly.
And but it is, I decided to join Orangetheory because I needed something else, because I was feeling a void. I was like, oh my God, like,
Now
I
what
felt
do I do?
like,
It's like, so it's over.
what do I do?
Right?
I missed the running. Like, I would get up and people would say you're crazy because I'm running at 5 o'clock in the morning, everybody's sleeping. But there was a purpose and this goal. But the goal, I obtained it, and then it was like, wow.
So then you set a new goal, right?
I said,
But
Yeah.
as you described, once you get over the soreness and the fatigue of starting an exercise program, then it drives you, and then you miss it if you don't
miss
do it.
it.
And so then again, you've broken the vicious cycle, and you're in a virtuous cycle.
Yeah. I want to ask you before we end, medication, some of this medication, especially for cholesterol, you need to check every 3 months or so, right?
So that used to be the case, and there's a lot of misinformation. I'm glad you asked about that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about cholesterol and the cholesterol-lowering medications. Please understand that 95% of people take cholesterol medicines with no side effects whatsoever.
Wow.
It is among the safest and best tolerated class of medicines we've ever come up with in the history of medicine. And in fact, whereas we used to check blood work every 3 months or so, now the FDA simply recommends on occasion. So that can be every 6 months, it can be once a year. I'll tell you, in some European countries, they sell the statins or the cholesterol medicines over the counter with no monitoring whatsoever.
Wow.
We don't really worry about liver problems. There have been some reports of some liver issues. Those are usually transient. They don't last for very long. And people talk about needing a liver transplant from cholesterol-lowering medications. It doesn't really happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How about blood pressure medication?
So blood pressure medications, different ones have different monitorings, because unfortunately there's literally dozens of classes. So some require a little bit more close monitoring than others. Your doctor can help you figure out, which type of monitoring you need depending on what medicine you're taking.
Wow. So what will you, let's give some tips, and we can even summarize because we're getting close to the end, for the holidays of how to control yourself and the things to watch for. And then that way we sort of summarize, because we gave a lot of information. So if you can sort of...
Sure. So in just a few words, if you hadn't gotten the gist of it, I'm a big fan of movement, right? And so over the holidays, people are generally going to consume more calories, even if you're working on portion control, even if you're trying not to have that third helping of mashed potatoes. You know what? You're still going to get more calories. So movement, just a few extra steps a day, makes a big difference. Taking an extra walk, getting on the treadmill, getting on the bike, going out and playing tennis, doing Orangetheory, whatever that is, a little something for movement can help with some of those extra calories that you're putting on over the holidays. And then finding the excuses to continue that movement after the holidays are over. Just because you're done with the parties doesn't mean you're done with exercise. Exercise really needs to be, ideally, lifelong.
I agree with you 100%. And I want to say thank you to the American Heart Association for supporting us and bringing this wonderful guest. We are extremely happy that you decided to join us and on this effort. Our show is about making an impact. And I know that the American Heart Association is all about making an impact. They mean business when it comes to cardiac and making sure that people are taking care of themselves and living a healthy life.
And being educated about it.
Yes.
Educating yourselves.
Absolutely. I'm honored to have been here, and a real pleasure talking with you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And we want to say thank you to you guys. We love you.
Yes.
And make sure that if you like the show,
Like us on
like
social media.
us. All right? Take
See you next
care.
week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.